Right, hello guys, and welcome to today's video. In today's video, I wanted to discuss a very interesting topic that I think is more appropriate now than ever before, just because, of course, we are waiting on those classic Call of Duty games to come to the Xbox Game Pass at some point. Of course, we've got some information coming soon, I believe in June or July it was. I do have a video discussing that, talking about when they're going to actually discuss old Call of Duties coming to Game Pass. If you want to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description or down below in the comments. But I wanted to talk about and debate with you guys the best era of Call of Duty. What is the best era of Call of Duty? Not the best game, okay? We're not going to discuss what the best game is because I feel like a lot of people, have it at Black Ops 2 and MW2. It's kind of between them two, but then I know other people like the classic Black Ops 1, then some people like Black Ops 3, and some of you maybe grew up with the modern era we have today, which I kind of call the warzone era. Some of you might say that, COD 4 was your best. There's a lot of big debates about what the best game is, but I want you guys to debate with me, and we'll discuss as well the best era of Call of Duty, a set era that we've had, because of course we've had the jetpack era, we've had the warzone era, we've had the golden age, the dinosaur era, the beginning era, and we're going to discuss all of them here in today's video. But I want you guys to let me know down in the comments down below, what do you think the best era is in Call of Duty, whilst we talk about and discuss it today. So, let's begin. Let's talk about the origins of Call of Duty. We're talking about COD 1 through to COD 3, which is appropriately, like, people call it the dinosaur era, which makes it sound very negative and very poor and, like, not a very good time. But what this means is, of course, it's very old. We're talking these COD 1 to COD 3 is about, like, 15, 20 years ago now. It's a very long time. I can't say much on these games, and this is why I'd love to you guys to put in the comments who did play these games, because you are a true OG if you played between COD 1 and COD 3. I, unfortunately, was not one of those people. I'm not sure how hard it would have been then, but I wouldn't have been appropriate age to play the game, let's just say that. So the chances of me playing are very unlikely. But COD 1 through to COD 3, the dinosaur era, the era that started, the first groundbreaking, start of Call of Duty, where Call of Duty was starting to kind of find itself. And I do believe its actual origins was PC. So everyone thinks that Call of Duty has always been a console game. I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Call of Duty 1 started off bigger and was more popular on PC before it eventually got its whole console movement, and it was taking a console for the 360 and the PlayStation 3, etc. But I didn't really play this era, so I can't talk too much about it. I can't talk about how great or how bad these were, but I do know these games didn't incorporate things like, tactical sprint or even sprinting. Like, walking was typically the pace of the game. This was kind of the era as well where you just about started to see Call of Duty montages, which became a first thing. One of the things that I think started to make Call of Duty take over. This was also during the era of when YouTube started to rise up, so it was very unlikely, anyone become, like, Call of Duty would become so mainstream. It was kind of word of mouth, because there wasn't such things as YouTube in that back then. Like, there was, but it wasn't as big as it is now today, where, you get millions and millions of views or hundreds of thousands of views on a game such as Call of Duty. This era grew up through word of mouth, hey, this game's great, and people would play it. This was kind of the era it was, but montages started to become a thing, and this era was very interesting. But I want you guys to let me know down below, how many of you played between COD 1 and COD 3? Let me know down below. My personal opinion on this era, it doesn't mean too much to me, like, I don't really, like, have a fascination with it. I want to, though. When these games come to Game Pass, I definitely want to try these games and just see what we grew up with. I never played these games, and I want to know, so hopefully these come to the Game Pass, which will be announced, of course, very soon at some point. Next up, let's talk about, now this era has been labelled the beginning era, which is COD 4 through to MW2. I feel like more COD 4 and World at War was its own era, but here it's got it labelled as COD 4, World at War, and MW2. I feel like MW2 obviously belongs in the golden era, like the best era, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I'm going to label the beginning era as COD 4 and World at War. This is when Call of Duty started to get its mechanics going, like things like kill streaks, and the game started to become more mainstream, and montages were popular, YouTube was becoming bigger, and at this point, I'd say Call of Duty was probably one of the biggest things on, in the era of YouTube, like growing up, where people would watch montages and you'd start to see slowly live streams. And this is kind of the era where people started to capture their gameplay, do commentaries, all that sort of thing. And I do bring YouTube into it because I think YouTube did play a massive point, videos and streaming and all that, did play a massive point into, Call of Duty being the game that it is today, making it so mainstream and bigger and having more of an audience like today. Like, it is a massive community. As much as people would say, COD's dying every year, etc., it's a huge community. Loads of other games or franchises would kill to have a game as big as Call of Duty is nowadays. But It's an interesting era. This was when the mechanics of Call of Duty start to appear, you know, kill streaks, movement. It was classic Call of Duty, you know, strafe speeds, aim assist, all that sort of stuff started to make its way into Call of Duty and make Call of Duty what it is today. You know, the pure foundations, great maps, the mini-map, red darts, all that sort of things started to come into the game. Attack helicopters, UAVs. And I personally think the addition of kill streaks was what started Call of Duty to be a lot more different to other games out there, because it wasn't really seen back then. You know, gold camos as well, progressions, leveling up, prestiging, all these things that were new and revolutionary to the gaming world. There could be other games that did have this at the time. They might have even stolen it from other games and just did a better job of it. Let me know down below whether or not that is true or false. But Call of Duty did it so well, and this was a great era, which again, I wasn't a part of. I did not grow up with COD 4. I did not grow up World at War. 2 games as well that I'm looking forward to playing when they do come to Game Pass myself. But let me know down below, for those who did play this era, and I imagine a lot of you did play the COD 4 era, because I do know this is one of the games that everyone, or most people, consider one of the best in the franchise. Probably because it is kind of the first groundbreaking game in the series that kind of lifted Call of Duty to the heights that it is today. Next up, though, we're going to talk about an era which I think a lot of people are probably going to put in the comments as the best era, the Golden Age. Now, again, it didn't consider Modern Warfare 2 in there. However, we do, of course, have Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops 1, MW3, Black Ops 2, and Call of Duty Ghosts has been put in this era. Now, I can get why it's put in this era, because, of course, the next era and what that era is, which we'll talk about in a second. But I wouldn't consider Ghosts a part of the Golden Age. It was an okay game. I think it was a little bit overhated, but it wasn't a part of this great age. The best era in Call of Duty, in my opinion, is the Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops 1, MW3, Black Ops 2. Those were 4 unbelievably great Call of Duties that added so much to the franchise. Classic maps, the best maps we have seen in the entire series. All 4 of these games had maps that you will remember, at least 1 or 2 or 3, that you would always want a, you know, a remaster of, which you see nowadays in the modern games. You see remasters of these maps because they were so good. And they were all such different games. Black Ops 2 being a futuristic boots on the ground game. Black Ops 1 being a classic, you know, sort of Cold War era kind of game. Then you had MW2, you know, being a modern era. And then MW3 as well. And all of these games had unbelievable campaigns. I think that's something that has to be spoken about as well. The campaigns for these games were absolute classics. Everyone would probably say that one of these campaigns was their favorites. They added other things as well, like zombies and Spec Ops and what you call it, can't remember what the other mode is now, but all of these things were revolutionary. Every single game had something to offer. Camo grinds, leveling, prestige tokens. This was the best era of Call of Duty. It's something that everyone obviously wants to go back to. Unfortunately, I know we're never going to get this era back. We might bring things back to make it close to this era, but we're never going to get this era back. The 360 mics and stuff, I think, you know, PlayStation 3, I think Xbox Live and all that contributed, you know, how big it was, people going into an online game, search and destroy with force game lobby chat and that. YouTube was huge for this stuff. Like, the content being made back then was unbelievable. Loads of people, you know, nowadays from YouTube made their career from these games because of how big they got. But this was probably the best era of Call of Duty we've ever seen in the entire franchise, and one that we'll probably never get again. But let me know down below what you think of that era. What do you think is the best card in that era? There's always a debatable one, because again, Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, Black Ops 3, MW3, MW2, and Call of Duty Ghosts. It's going to be included this era because, of course, the next era we're going to go on to is Advanced Warfare, Infinite Warfare, and Black Ops 3. Now, I haven't said that in the right order, but the jetpack era, this is a very controversial era, that's safe to say. A lot of people, I want you guys to let me know down below on this one as well. Did you hate the jetpack era, or did you like the jetpack era, or are you not so sure on this era? Me personally, I was okay with the jetpack era. It seemed to progressively get better, in my opinion. So besides, of course, we reached the roadblock that was Infinite Warfare and the controversy that happened with that game. But Advanced Warfare was, of course, this game-breaking change to the series. I think this started because everyone was saying that Call of Duty was the same thing. It was the same movement, the same thing. It's just different guns and stuff. And people started to complain that Call of Duty was a little bit too much the same, which I didn't understand this complaint. I loved how Call of Duty was back in the day, but unfortunately, that was the complaints at the time, that Call of Duty was the same game every year. And Sledgehammer tried to go out of its way to make something revolutionary. And it's fair enough, you know, they tried it. It didn't really hit really well. This was, of course, as well, the era where we did fully change over to next-gen console. Yes, there was a pre-gen version of Advanced Warfare, but they were truly horrible. And there was one for Black Ops 3, and it was also truly horrible. And I believe the last game for the 360 and PlayStation 3 era was Black Ops 3. I don't believe an Infinite Warfare copy was ever made for the previous gen consoles, but this is when we made the change to Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and it was an interesting time. Black Ops 3, I feel, is one of my favourite games in the series. I think it did jetpacks the absolute best. It didn't completely ruin the Call of Duty experience. I think Advanced Warfare's movement was just a little bit too much. It was too chaotic for my liking. And Infinite Warfare, well, I think I fell for the train that everyone else fell for. A lot of people disliked the, I think people were fed up with jetpacks. People wanted the classic Call of Duty experience, which is understandable. Call of Duty has always been a boots on the ground game. I wouldn't want to experience this era again. It was an interesting era, but I wouldn't want to go back to the jetpack era again. I think that era got done with and is over with now. We don't need to go back and revisit it. Maybe they will in the future, but I highly, highly doubt it. With the backlash that, of course, came with Infinite Warfare. But Infinite Warfare, I think, was an overhated game. I think that was how would I put it, a victim of like this crowd mentality of being hated. I think Infinite Warfare had a good campaign. The multiplayer wasn't actually that bad, but I didn't play the game at launch. I bought the game so many months later when it was massively discounted. They kind of half-assed DLC for this game. They didn't even announce they had like DLCs when they went live and stuff. They gave up on Infinite Warfare, right? The player base was so low. Still did better than Battlefield at the time, which was supposed to be the COD killer. I remember everyone was saying that Battlefield was going to absolutely have COD that year, and Infinite Warfare still outdone Battlefield that year. But yeah, the jetpack era, very interesting one. Started promising, started to get better, and then kind of collapsed at the final one, and then we've never heard of the jetpack era ever again. We did see a brief thing in Black Ops 4, which I'll talk about in that little era, but an interesting era, and I want you guys to let me know down below, what did you think of that era? Is it controversial? Did you hate it? Did you like it? What is your opinions on it? I feel like it's the most controversial era we've had in the entire series so far, is the jetpack era of Call of Duty. Next up, I can call it the pre-CDL era, so of course we're talking about competitive Call of Duty, which has been a feature with most of these Call of Duties. I think since COD 4 was when competitive Call of Duty was really known and kind of starting to make its way up. But World War II and Black Ops 4, it's called the pre-CDL era. There's not really too much to say this era. I think this is Call of Duty trying to rediscover its identity. We went back to boots on the ground with World War II to go really classic with the movement and stuff. And it didn't hit again. I personally enjoyed World War II. Like, I think it was a good game, but I don't think it hit that well with the community. I think something was missing from the game. I don't think they made the best maps for that game. Obviously, we had Gustav Cannon, which was, well, you guys let me know your thoughts and opinions down below about Gustav Cannon, but this is one of the worst maps we've ever had in Call of Duty. It didn't quite hit. I liked it for the war mode personally, but everything else about it didn't really hit that well. It was a bit of a stale game, but an enjoyable one to me. I did enjoy the war mode. I love making montages. And in fact, if you go to this channel and you go to like my first ever videos, I do believe my first ever videos were making random World War II montages. If you want to check them out, even though they are really, really bad, and I recommend to do not watch them. Black Ops 4, again, another change to Call of Duty where we were trying to rediscover, I guess, its identity. They had massive health changes, the largest amount of health we'd ever seen in a Call of Duty, long time to kills, gunfights and stuff. And also started to see the mess of Call of Duty a little bit with, game testers being, like, treated horribly and stuff. And this is when we started to see the back end of what was going on, where it started to fall apart a little bit. We also had, of course, the controversy of weapons being in supply drops and bundles and stuff, which I also forgot to say as well. Obviously, this was the era as well, the jetpack era and the pre-CDL era. Both incorporated supply drops, and whether or not that was controversial is another thing. I think most people would hated it. Me personally, I'm kind of on the side of it was okay if it was to grind for. If it was in the game now, and it was just a thing where you grinded and got supply drops without weapons in the supply drops, of course, because that was the big controversy. Was the weapons that you had to pay for in supply drops was absolutely outrageous because it caused a massive pay-to-win issue, and Advanced Warfare was probably the worst for it, with, of course, the Battle Obsidian Steed and the Speakeasy, which were really hard to get. If you had them, it was such a massive advantage to you. But, yes, this was the era as well, supply drops and that, getting camos and stuff. A lot of good content, but it was all hidden behind a paywall, and it was quite controversial. I think it could personally make its return in Call of Duty by being a non-paid-for thing where people, every time they play a game, just get something to unlock, like a random box that opens and gives you something. But just don't have weapons in that. Give it good camos and stickers or emblems or whatever, a calling card. Something cool in there to grind for so you feel like you're getting rewarded every game. But we're never going to go back to that, I don't think. I think the era is now what we have with store bundles and stuff. But yeah, an interesting era, World War II and Black Ops 4. I feel like it was Call of Duty trying to rediscover itself. It has some interesting games. Some people like them, I believe, but I don't think these are anybody's fans' favourites. But if it is your fan favourite, let me know down below and let me know why you believe that World War II or Black Ops 4 was your fan favourite. And then finally, we're going to move on to the final era of Call of Duty, which is the current era that we're in, which is the CDL/Warzone era. I'm going to call it the Warzone era because, of course, this is the era that's kind of taken off with Warzone. Everything seems to be about Warzone, Warzone 1, Warzone 2, Warzone 3 / it's called Warzone again. You know, it's got some interesting parts, doesn't it? So we, of course, started with the Call of Duty Modern Warfare. We went back to calling things, you know, the original games, basically, but Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and then we moved on to Black Ops Cold War, then we moved on to Call of Duty Vanguard, Modern Warfare 2, or COD MW2, and then current game, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, which was kind of not supposed to be a thing, but it is, of course. Here we are in the era of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, and then we're going to be moving on to next year, which will be Black Ops Gulf War, Black Ops 5, 6, whatever it is, what it's going to be called. It's an interesting era. There's not too much to say with multiplayer. You know, it went back to its roots. I feel like we do have the Call of Duty Classic experience. It does, of course, have the tac sprint, slide cancelling as well. We could even call this the slide cancel era. Besides Cold War kind of eliminated the slide cancel a little bit. But most of these Call of Duties have been about the movement of the slide cancel and the YY kids. And we all grew up with that era now. The Rebirth Island, you know, demons and stuff. It's also the era where we've grown up with probably the most amount of cheating we've ever seen in Call of Duty. It happens a lot now. The addition of an actual proper anti-cheat. I say proper anti-cheat. Of course, we're still dealing with cheating issues to this day. It's an interesting era. I've seen a lot of people say that Call of Duty Modern Warfare is one of the best games of all time. Of course, I'm talking about MW 2019 when I say that. I personally don't agree with that. It was amazing when they added Warzone. Like, I think everyone experienced, you know, the COVID Warzone times. It was a great era for Call of Duty. It kind of benefited from the COVID, you know, everyone being indoors and playing this great game. It was something interesting to play. It was a great time. Play with your boys, your friends, whatever. It was an interesting era. Some people want to go back to there, of course. Next year, we're supposed to actually get Verdansk back as well. So it's an interesting one. I don't know how to say with this era. Like, Call of Duty MW 2019, to me, wasn't the greatest game in the series, in my opinion. It was okay. It had some cool stuff. I think it added some great things to the game. You know, the season pass and stuff like that. I think it's done very well now with the season pass. You unlock the content through it. I think the things like Black Cell that we've got now are quite cool. Yes, you have to pay for them, and that's here or there, whether people agree or not, that's worth it or not. It's an interesting era. Call of Duty Cold War, I liked it, but I think a lot of people found it stale. It feels like the most, how would I put it, competitive kind of Call of Duty that we've had in recent years. I think it was a game that was built mainly for competitive Call of Duty. Probably why I liked it. I do like competitive Call of Duty. I like that sort of grasp on things. Love Search and Destroy in that game. Was an interesting game, but I think it got a little bit stale for people. I think people hated the skill-based matchmaking, of course. That's another thing. We could say that this is the era that skill-based matchmaking happened, where it got super strict, right? The era from Black Ops 4 through to moving to MW 2019, to Cold War, to Vanguard, to MW2 and MW3. We have seen the strictest amount of skill-based matchmaking we've ever seen in Call of Duty that affects our pings a lot of the time. It affects who we matchmake, and it affects the fun factor of Call of Duty, and I think we've lost that because of skill-based matchmaking. But it's something that has been in this era. There's a lot of different things in this era, but the big one through all of those games has been Warzone in the background. All these games have been made with the intention of making Warzone great, because they got that hit game in MW 2019 with Warzone that followed on from the back end of, I guess, the tester for it, which everyone sometimes forgets now, which was Black Ops 4 with Blackout, if everyone remembers that, of course. Blackout was an interesting, the start of Battle Royale for Call of Duty, obviously trying to take on that Fortnite juice and all these other Battle Royales that were being made at the time. And Battle Royales, of course, take over, and COD wanted to get and enjoy that kind of, how would I put it, audience that was out there, the people that out there that were looking for a Battle Royale, and Call of Duty got in there with Verdansk, and then we moved on to Caldera and all that stuff, Rebirth Island. And to this day, Warzone is still popular now, so it clearly is doing its job, it's doing well. Call of Duty is obviously rising every day. And yeah, it's an interesting era. It's not my favourite era. Obviously, I played in the golden era, I think a lot of people did, but I know a lot of you watching this channel probably have grown up in the CDL/Warzone era, and I want you guys to let me know down below. What is your thoughts on the CDL Warzone era? Because I believe a lot of you watching this video now are people who have experienced your first Call of Duties. Your first Call of Duty might be MW 2019, it might be Black Ops Cold War, it might be Vanguard, it might have been MW2 from last year, it might be MW3 right now. I want you guys to let me know your thoughts and feelings about the Warzone/CD era. It's a very interesting, controversial era with the skill-based matchmaking, the store bundles, the Warzone, all that stuff. I want you guys to let me know down below. But an interesting topic to discuss, and I want you guys to let me know your thoughts and feelings about everything that we discussed today. What is your favorite era? Are you one of the people that played the first ever Call of Duty through to now? Have you skipped some Call of Duties? These are all things that I want to know. Let me discuss in the comments down below, because I feel like it's an interesting topic now, with the fact that, of course, all these games are going to be coming to Game Pass at some point this year, and we will get to experience all of these great eras in the modern day right now, in the modern era of the Warzone era of Call of Duty. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. It was a long one today, but for those of you who did make it to the end of the video, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe with notifications on. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Goodbye.